They say the CB radio is what keeps you sane out here, something to break the silence and remind you you're not alone on the road. Most nights, it's just chatter, static, and the occasional voice passing through. Nothing you don't expect. But that changes when the voice isn't random, and it isn't distant. Around 2:17 a.m., somewhere past Amarillo, mine came through clear, steady, like it had been there the whole time, just waiting. I hadn't said anything yet. I hadn't touched the radio, but it didn't hesitate, didn't ask who was there. It just spoke like it already knew. And then it said my name. Hello, little ravens. Tonight, these are 3 true stories from truckers who heard something on the radio they still can't explain. If you've ever driven alone at night, stay with us, subscribe for more true horror, and listen carefully. I've been driving the same route for almost 8 years now, mostly overnight runs between Oklahoma City and Albuquerque. It's quiet work, predictable, and after a while, you stop noticing the miles. The radio keeps you company, even if it's just static most of the time. You learn to recognize voices, even the ones you've never met. That night started like any other. I left a little past midnight. Light traffic, clear sky, nothing unusual. I checked in on the CB out of habit. Heard a couple of drivers talking about construction up ahead. Then it faded back into that low, steady hiss. I settled in, coffee in hand, letting the road do what it always does. About an hour in, I noticed something small. Every time I reached for the radio to adjust the volume, the static would dip for a second, like something was trying to come through, but couldn't quite break in. It wasn't strong enough to be a signal, just enough to catch my attention. I figured it was interference. I kept driving, didn't think much of it, but it kept happening. Not constant, not rhythmic, just timed, only when my hand got close to the radio. I tested it once, pulling my hand back and then reaching again. Same thing. A soft drop in the static, like a breath being held. Around 2 a.m., I passed a rest area I usually stop at, but I wasn't tired yet. The road was empty. No headlights ahead, none behind me for miles. I remember thinking how quiet it felt, even for that stretch. The kind of quiet that makes you turn the radio up just to fill the space. That's when it came through. At first, it sounded like a normal transmission cutting in, that sharp break in the static. I expected to hear a call sign or someone asking for a radio check. Instead, there was just a second of silence, like whoever was on the other end was waiting for me to respond first. I didn't say anything. I just listened. Then the voice came in, low and steady, not distorted, not crackling like most signals out there. It sounded close, too close, like it wasn't traveling across miles of highway, but sitting right there in the cab with me, just out of sight. Still driving, huh? I froze for a second, more confused than anything. It didn't use a handle, didn't ask who was on channel. It just spoke. I glanced at the mirror, half expecting to see headlights behind me, but the road was still empty. I picked up the mic, hesitated, then said, "Yeah? Who's this?" No answer. Just static again, like nothing had happened. I waited a few seconds, then set the mic down. I told myself it was just someone messing around, maybe a strong signal bouncing weird. It happens sometimes, especially at night. Still, something about the way it sounded didn't sit right. A few minutes passed, and I started to relax again. The road stretched out ahead, same as always. I adjusted my seat, took a sip of coffee, tried to shake it off. That's when the radio clicked again. This time, there was no pause. "You missed your stop back there." I felt that one. Not like fear, not yet, but something sharper. I hadn't told anyone I usually stopped at that rest area. I hadn't even slowed down. There was no reason for anyone to bring it up. I grabbed the mic faster this time. "You talking to me?" Again, nothing. Just the static filling the cab, like it had before. I checked the channel, flipped through a couple others, but they were all dead. No chatter, no distant voices, nothing but that same low hiss. I switched back, thinking maybe I caught the end of someone else's conversation, but deep down, I knew that wasn't it. The road ahead started to feel different after that. Not darker, not unfamiliar, just watched. Every mile marker, every sign, I found myself paying more attention than usual, like I was trying to prove something to myself, that I was alone out there. 10 minutes went by before the radio came alive again. Next one's closed. I didn't need to ask what it meant. There was another rest stop about 20 miles ahead. I hadn't thought about it yet, hadn't made any decision to stop or keep going. But now it was in my head, and I couldn't ignore it. I didn't respond this time. I just kept driving. When I finally saw the sign for the rest area, I slowed down without really deciding to. The entrance ramp came into view, and even from a distance, I could tell something was off. No lights, no parked trucks, just darkness where there should have been at least something. I drove past it. As soon as I cleared the exit, the radio clicked again. "You don't stop anymore." That's when I turned it off. I reached over and killed the power completely, something I'd never done before on a run. The silence that followed was heavier than the static had been. It pressed in from all sides, like the cab had gotten smaller without the noise. I kept my eyes on the road, both hands on the wheel, not looking at the radio. I told myself it was over, that whatever it was had stopped because I'd cut it off, that it was just some kind of interference I didn't understand. Then, without any sound, without the click or the static, I heard it again. Not from the radio. "Keep going." It wasn't loud. It wasn't even clear in the way it had been before. But it was there. Close enough that I didn't need the speaker to hear it. Close enough that I checked the passenger seat without thinking. It was empty. I drove the rest of the night without turning the radio back on. Didn't stop, didn't slow down, didn't answer anything. When I finally reached Albuquerque, the sun was just starting to come up, and everything felt normal again. Traffic, noise, people, all of it. I told myself I'd just been tired, that my mind filled in the gaps, turned static into something it wasn't, that there had to be a reason for it, something simple I just couldn't see at the time. But the next night, when I started my route again, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. The radio was already on, and the channel was already set. I don't remember turning it back on. Some drivers say the road gets quieter the longer you stay on it. Fewer voices, less noise, until the silence starts answering back. Because out there, you rely on patterns, familiar stops, familiar routes, familiar signals. But what happens when something else learns those patterns too? Not just where you are, but where you were supposed to be. If that voice knew his route that well, the real question is, how long had it been listening? If this story gave you chills, be sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thank you. I've been running night freight between Flagstaff and Barstow for a few years now, and most of those drives blend together. Same highway, same long stretches of nothing, same low hum of the engine, carrying you forward. The CB radio is usually just background noise, something to break the silence. That night felt normal at first, but there was something slightly off I couldn't explain. No weather issues, no traffic, no delays, just a kind of quiet that felt heavier than usual. I remember checking my mirrors more often, even though there was nothing behind me for miles. Around 1:30 a.m., I turned on the radio and let it settle in a quiet channel. Static filled the cab, low and steady, exactly what I expected. I adjusted the volume and kept my eyes on the road, letting the sound sit in the background while I drove. A few minutes later, I reached for the mic without really thinking about it. Just habit, something to check if anyone was out there. But before my hand even touched it, the radio broke through the static. "Go ahead." I paused with my hand mid-air, fingers just inches from the mic. For a second, I thought someone else had keyed in at the same time. It happens sometimes, especially on empty roads. I waited, expecting another voice to respond. Nothing followed. The static returned like nothing had happened, filling the cab again. I slowly pulled my hand back and stared at the radio for a second longer than I should have. It didn't make sense, but I told myself it was just timing. I waited about a minute before trying again, this time paying attention. I kept my eyes forward and moved my hand slowly toward the mic, almost testing it. The second I got close, the radio clicked again. Go ahead, same tone, same clarity. No distortion, no delay, no sense of distance. It didn't sound like someone transmitting from miles away. It sounded close. Too close. I glanced at the mirrors again, but the road behind me was empty. No headlights, no signs of another truck, nothing that could explain a signal that strong. I picked up the mic anyway, trying to keep my voice steady. Yeah, who's this? The moment I released the button, the radio went back to static. No response, no acknowledgement. Just silence layered over that low hiss, like the question hadn't even mattered. I set the mic back in place and tried to focus on the road again. But now every small sound in the cab felt amplified. The engine, the tires, even my own breathing. The radio sat there between it all, quiet again, like it hadn't done anything. 10 minutes passed without a single interruption. I started to relax a little, convincing myself it was just interference or some kind of signal overlap. Something explainable, even if I didn't fully understand it. Then I moved my hand again, not even toward the mic this time, just shifting my grip on the wheel. The radio cut in instantly, sharper than before. Still there. I didn't respond. I just stared at the road, feeling that same tightness build in my chest. It wasn't what the voice said, it was when it said it. It wasn't reacting to the radio. It was reacting to me. I kept both hands on the wheel and didn't move. The radio stayed silent. I waited, counting seconds in my head, trying to slow everything down. The longer I stayed still, the more normal things felt again. Just the road, the engine, the static. Nothing else. Eventually, I convinced myself to test it one more time. Not because I wanted to, but because not knowing felt worse. I needed to see if it would happen again, or if I just connected things that weren't there. Slowly, I lifted one hand off the wheel. The radio clicked immediately. Don't. I froze. The word wasn't loud or aggressive. It didn't need to be. It came through with a kind of certainty that made it hard to ignore. Like it wasn't a suggestion, it was a correction. I lowered my hand back to the wheel. The radio went quiet again. That's when it shifted from confusing to something else. Something I couldn't explain in a simple way anymore. It wasn't about signals or timing. It was about awareness. About something noticing what I was doing. I kept driving, forcing myself to stay still, to not react. Minutes passed like that, each one stretching longer than it should. The road ahead looked the same, but it didn't feel the same anymore. At some point, I made the mistake of glancing to the side. Just a quick look toward the passenger seat. The radio broke in instantly, eyes forward. I snapped my attention back to the road, so fast it made my chest tighten. My hands gripped the wheel harder than before, and I didn't look anywhere else after that. Not the mirrors, not the dashboard, just forward. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything the radio had said. I drove like that for nearly an hour without moving more than I needed to. No voice came back, no interruptions, nothing. It almost felt like whatever had been watching had lost interest. Eventually, I started to believe it was over. Carefully, I reached toward the radio to turn it off. Slow, controlled, trying not to trigger anything. My fingers brushed the knob. The radio clicked one last time. Now you can. I didn't hesitate. I turned it off immediately, cutting the sound completely. The silence that followed felt different, not empty, but unfinished. like something had stopped speaking, not disappeared. I kept driving without turning it back on. When I finally reached Barstow, the sky was just starting to lighten. Other trucks appeared on the road again, distant voices on other channels, everything returning to normal. Or at least something close to it. I parked, shut the engine down, and sat there for a moment before moving. That's when I noticed the mic. It wasn't hanging where I left it. It had shifted slightly forward, like it had been picked up and set back down, and I couldn't remember touching it. Some drivers say the radio is just a tool, something you control when you need it. You decide when to speak, when to listen, when to reach for it. But what happens when that control isn't yours anymore? When something responds before you act, and reacts to things you never said out loud? Out there, timing is everything. Every move, every decision, every second matters. So if something was answering him before he even spoke, the real question is, was it listening? Or was it already watching? I've been driving long haul for over 10 years, mostly night routes where the road stretches out and everything starts to feel the same after a while. You get used to the silence, the repetition, the steady rhythm of the engine. The CB radio becomes part of that routine, even when no one's talking. That night, I was running through eastern New Mexico, heading toward Amarillo on a tight schedule. Traffic was almost non-existent, just the occasional set of headlights passing in the opposite direction. It was one of those drives where nothing happens, and that's exactly how you want it. I turned the radio on a little after 2 a.m., more out of habit than anything else. Static filled the cab, low and constant, the kind of sound you stop noticing after a few minutes. I adjusted the volume slightly and kept my focus on the road. For a while, everything stayed normal. About 20 minutes in, I started noticing something faint under the static. Not a full transmission, not clear enough to understand, just fragments of a voice breaking through for a second at a time. It sounded distant, like someone just outside the edge of range. I leaned forward slightly, listening closer, trying to catch a word or a pattern. It didn't sound urgent, just steady. I figured it was another driver too far out to reach clearly, maybe bouncing signals off something in the distance. I reached for the mic, planning to ask for a radio check. Before I could press the button, the voice came through clearly. "Hey." I stopped with my hand hovering over the mic, not touching it. The word wasn't distorted, wasn't stretched or broken like weak signals usually are. It sounded clean, direct, like it came from somewhere close. I picked up the mic anyway, trying to keep things normal. "Yeah, go ahead." There was a pause on the other end, just long enough to feel intentional. Not like someone waiting for a response, but like someone deciding what to say next. Then the voice came back. "You still driving this late?" The question itself wasn't strange. It's something drivers say all the time, but the tone felt off. Too familiar for someone I didn't recognize, like it skipped the part where we figure out who we're talking to. "Yeah," I said. "Who's this?" The radio went quiet again. Not static, just silence, like the signal had dropped completely. I held the mic a second longer, then set it back down slowly, keeping my eyes on the road. A few seconds passed before it came back. "You always do that." I frowned, adjusting my grip on the wheel. It wasn't how conversations on the radio worked. No names, no handles, no location. Just statements that didn't quite belong. I glanced at the mirrors out of instinct. Still no one behind me. "No idea who you mean," I said, keeping my voice steady. The static returned for a moment, low and steady, like everything had reset. I thought maybe that was it. Just interference, broken signals crossing at the wrong time. Then the voice came through again, clearer than before. "You used to call me." I felt something tighten in my chest, but I didn't know why yet. The sentence was simple, but it didn't fit. I hadn't used the radio like that. Not for conversations, not for anything personal. "Wrong driver," I said. You've got the wrong. You called when you couldn't stay awake. I stopped talking. The words didn't just interrupt me. They replaced what I was about to say. For a second, I wasn't even looking at the road anymore. I was just listening. There was something in the tone I recognized. Not clearly, not immediately, but enough to make me hesitate. Years ago, when I first started running nights, I used to call my brother during long drives, just to stay awake. We'd talk about nothing most of the time, just passing the hours until morning. I hadn't thought about that in a long time. Who is this? I asked again, quieter now. The radio stayed silent for a few seconds, like it was waiting for something from me. Then the voice returned, softer, but still clear. You don't call anymore. That's when it shifted. The pacing, the tone, the way the words landed, it lined up with something I hadn't heard in years. Not perfectly, not enough to say it out loud, but enough to feel it. I didn't respond. I just kept driving, both hands on the wheel, eyes forward, trying to keep everything steady. The cab felt smaller somehow, like the space around me had tightened. The radio clicked again. You kept driving. I shook my head slightly, more to myself than anything else. No, I muttered. That's not. You didn't stop. The words came through without hesitation. I gripped the wheel harder. The night my brother died, I was on the road. I didn't know until hours later. I didn't stop because I didn't have a reason to. I just kept driving like any other night. I grabbed the mic again, this time without thinking. Stop. The word came out sharper than I expected. The radio went completely silent. No static. No hum. Nothing. I held the mic there for a few seconds, waiting for something to come back through. But it didn't. The silence stayed, heavier than anything I'd heard before. Slowly, I set the mic down. The road ahead looked the same, but it didn't feel the same anymore. Every mile felt closer, tighter, like I was moving through something instead of over it. I reached over and turned the radio off. The silence that followed was complete. Just the engine, the tires, and nothing else. No background noise, no interruptions, no voice. I drove the rest of the night like that. Didn't turn the radio back on. Didn't try to explain it. When I reached Amarillo, the sky was starting to lighten, and everything began to feel normal again. Traffic, movement, sound things I hadn't noticed were missing until they came back. I told myself it was exhaustion, that my mind filled in the gaps, turned static into something familiar, something personal, that there was a reason for it, even if I couldn't see it clearly. But later that day, when I checked my phone, there was something I couldn't explain. An outgoing call, placed at 2:18 a.m., no number attached, and it lasted just over 3 minutes. Some voices stay with you, even after they're gone. Not clearly, not all the time, but enough that you'd recognize them if you heard them again. Out on the road, where everything is quiet and your mind starts filling the gaps, that line between memory and reality gets thinner than it should. But this wasn't just memory. It responded. It continued. It knew what to say next. So if that voice really was familiar, the real question is, was he remembering it? Or was something else remembering him? Out on the road, you trust what you can see and what you can hear. The engine, the tires, the radio, all of it becomes part of something predictable, something you rely on to stay in control. But tonight, those rules didn't hold. Voices came through when they shouldn't, answered before they were called, and knew things they had no reason to know. Not random, not noise, something else. And maybe the most unsettling part isn't what was said, it's how easily it fit, like it had always been there, waiting for the right moment to be heard. So if you ever find yourself alone on a dark road, with nothing but static in the background, pay attention to when it breaks, and more importantly, what it already knows. Subscribe if you're interested in genuine, memorable horror. At the end, I've included 2 more videos for you to continue watching, and listen carefully. Some signs don't end when the video finishes.